Buckle up, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm going to tell you a tale of adventure. A tale about timing and thinking outside of the box and basically making really hard life decisions with what you know at the time. I knew that my son, Avante, was different. He would get bored and frustrated really quickly with toys and activities that kids his age thought were cool. When he was 3, I went to Toys R Us with a big pile of money, and I bought all toys that were targeted towards 5 and 6-year-olds. Because I knew I was going to have to figure out a way to satiate his hunger for knowledge and experience. I went home, my husband was cool about it, and I redecorated our whole apartment to be kind of like a classroom with stations. So we had an art area, a music area, science, geography, and then an exploratory movement center. That was the living room. So this satiated Avante for a while. When he was 5, we had this play date and a bunch of neighborhood kids came over. Now, they were sitting in the art area. Yes, our apartment was the place to be because we had so much gear in there. And they were hanging out and they were doing some drawings. They had markers and pens and paper. Now, Kira from next door, Kira drew a flower, okay, and a sun. The boy from the other side of the street, Mark, he drew a stick figure of himself and his mom and his dad. And then I looked over at Avante's paper, and he had filled up the entire page, left to right, top to bottom, with a map of the world. He had continents, he had oceans, he had mountains, he had rivers, he had airports, he had countries, and he'd even written some of the names on the countries because evidently he'd been studying the world map in our kitchen without me knowing it. That's what I said, wow. So I had some background in child development, and I was like, okay, I have to save my pennies, and I have to go take this boy to an educational psychologist and get him tested and just figure out what's going on in there. $500, and 3 hours later, they emerged from her office, my son looking exhausted and her looking super excited, and she said, Victoria, your son has 150 IQ. And that means that he's 1 out of 30,000 children his age. Now, just in case you're rolling your eyes right about now and being like, oh, here's another mom humble bragging about how smart her kid is, you could not be further from the truth. First of all, I don't live through my son, ever. True. Second of all, this information, while exciting and opened a lot of doors for our son, we're like, okay, he can learn anything he wants, he can do whatever he wants. It also came with another piece of information called asynchrony. And asynchrony is just like it sounds. My son had a 12th grade vocabulary in a 5-year-old body with 5-year-old emotions, which basically meant that he would never fit in. My husband asked the educational psychologist, when do you think that Avante will fit in? And she said, probably in grad school. So we took this information very seriously, and we took the responsibility of shepherding his young mind through his early and later childhood very, very, very seriously. Now, my husband is also a turntablist DJ, and if you don't know what that is, here's a primer, okay? So you've got 2 records, yes, vinyl, old school, okay? And this one record is like going, and this other record's like, and then you're mixing in this syncopated way that's kind of like a long song, which is called a beat juggle. So, long story short, Avante had been watching his dad in the lab, which was our home sound studio. It sounds like our apartment was really big, it really wasn't. We just had corners of stuff. And anyway, so they went into the lab because Avante wanted to learn how to turntable, DJ, okay? My role was to make food and just keep bringing it in there. So day after day, week after week, they were in the lab, and then finally they came out with this 5-minute routine that had 40 songs, 20 records, and Avante had memorized it, and he was ready to perform. He's still 5. So I could tell you about how Johnny entered Avante into the Chicago Regional DMC competition, which is a DJ competition against adults, and my son won 2nd place. And I could tell you how the DMC freaked out and they flew Avante to New York City so that he could be part of the national competition, where he got on stage and had to stand on a chair to reach the turntables and competed in front of 600 people. And I could tell you about how the next day he was like an internet sensation. You can search him, world's youngest turntablist DJ. Do it after my story, please. But he is on there still. And anyway, I could tell you about how then we came back to Chicago and he was on WGN, WLS. He opened for Korn at Wrigley Field and a bunch of stuff. But that's not what I really want to talk about. What I want to talk about is how weird this period of time was for me. Because as you could imagine, I am a person who observes, and some say analyzes, many things. And so basically I was like, this is Avante's introduction to the world and the world's introduction to Avante. And there were kind of 3 different ways that people saw him. A, child prodigy. B, anomaly. C, freak. And I wanted to protect my son. I wanted to protect my son. I wanted to protect my son. Around this same time, we found out that he had gotten into Pritzker Elementary, which is a Chicago public school. It was a gifted magnet program. And so we did the most normal thing that we had done that whole summer, which is that we went to Walgreens to buy school supplies. It was fun. And so we got, like pencils and rulers and spiral notebooks and all that gear. Avante was walking home. He was all excited. He spread his gear out on the kitchen table, and he was very carefully writing his name with a marker inside. He would stick his tongue out when he was concentrating like this. And so then he was like, A, B, A, N, T, E. And the phone rang. It was Good Morning America. They wanted him to appear on GMA, to DJ, and to be interviewed. They were going to fly him to New York, and the air date and the recording date was the first day of kindergarten. So I was like, over my dead body is my child going to be standing on a stage in New York City, missing the first day of school. But I politely said, we'll call you back in a few minutes. And the woman was like, are you sure? Because I don't think a lot of people return Good Morning America's call. They just say yes. Long story short, my husband and I had a chat. Avante, go play in your room. Dad and I need to talk. We got out a piece of paper. We started doing the pro-con list. Number 1, Good Morning America. Becomes a child star. National notoriety. Makes a ton of money doing product endorsements. Put the money towards college. Child star. JonBenet Ramsey. Number 2, Pritzker Elementary, eats lunch with other kids, plays on the playground, becomes a guy, makes a friend, learns. I think you know which decision I made. A week later, we enter Pritzker Elementary. His teacher, Sari Frank, she has this big curly hair and this yellow t-shirt, these bell-bottom jeans, this huge smile, and she's like, Avante! She leads him over to his cubby, and his name is like written on a piece of masking tape on the bottom. He puts his lunchbox on top of the masking tape. She leads him over to his little table where he's sitting with the other kids. I look around the room, it's like a United Nations of kids culled from all over Chicago, curious, excited kids who want to be in school. Sari Frank says, okay, everybody, open your spiral notebook and write about what you did this summer. Avante smiles at me and begins to write his story. I know I've made the right decision, and as I leave the room, I say to myself, from here on, when it comes to any decision about my son, I will always trust my gut. Thank you.